What if Vladimir Putin's empire is crumbling not from missiles, but from a silent invasion unfolding right in the heart of Moscow? Shocking leaked videos reveal thousands of foreign workers queuing up like shadows in a dying superpower, whispering the real cost of war that Russia's leaders desperately conceal. Imagine this bustling capital of ideology and power, the Kremlin's fortress in your mind's eye, vibrating with the pulse of red flags and grand parades. Yet, the scenes flashing before you now echo the gritty slums of New Delhi's fringe, the grim forced labor pits under Pyongyang's iron fist, far more than a thriving Russian core. They're eerily akin to Beijing's sprawling cheap toil networks, where sweat and sacrifice fuel endless machines. Why this eerie resemblance? It's the aggressive push by China and North Korea seizing Russia's labor heartbeat, hidden in the shadows of Putin's domain. Countless laborers from Kim Jong-un's realm and Xi Jinping's vast lands pour into the nation, a flood threatening to redraw the map of work that might slip entirely from Russian grasp. Could Putin truly be blind to this tide eroding his realm? Stepping back from that invasive queue in Kapotnya district, at Moscow oil refinery's gates, the place where diesel fumes hang thick in the air, and the slap of boots on asphalt echoes like a metronome of toil, we glimpsed the raw truth of wars that consume a nation. These lines weren't ordinary seekers of shifts, they were outsiders taking over, their presence a stark admission of homeland's fracture. Social media leaks and Belarusian reports exposed it all. Frames that hit harder than a cold reality check, unveiling 2 years of Kremlin's cover-ups. Recall the trembling tone in that Russian man's voice, captured on video, laced with fury and despair, like a growl soaked in the sting of betrayal. His sorrow palpable, he mourned his nation's descent into chaos. This wasn't mere job hunting, it proved Russia's workforce has shattered its unity, voices of diverse tongues clashing in the air, hands calloused from distant lands grabbing once local roles. Vladimir Putin's mission in Ukraine bled Russia's mail corps so swiftly the Kremlin now hauls millions from Asia, Africa, the Middle East to spin the gears. With a claimed 1 million army losses, the nation's fabric unravels. Of 143 million souls, just 66 million are men, elderly included, youth alike. Add 1 million troops in active grind and 2 million reserves called up, and foreign hands fill the voids. Picture the odor of sweat-drenched uniforms mingling with machine oil, the grind of tools a constant roar drowning out native pride. Are Russians being ground down to replace the fallen with strangers, or is this the plot unfolding? We'll uncover how industries quietly cede ground, and how mercenaries shadow natives in factories or battlefields, heralding an empire's internal rot. Brace for revelations that might astound. Venture east 1,000 kilometers from Moscow, to Tatarstan's edge in Alabuga's economy zone, the war's production nerve, where Iranian Shahed-1-3-6 kamikaze drones, called Gorol-2 in Russian, blast terror on Ukrainian skies. Factories churn 170 to 190 daily by Ukrainian intelligence's HUR probe. Not via sleek tech, but brutal labor toil. No oligarch finesse here, just flesh and bone powering death's assembly. Russia's defense camps lack 400,000 hands gone to Ukrainian mud, engineers, techs, machinists lost forever. Who patches these holes? Pyongyang's answer emerges. Ukrainian spies detail a Kremlin scheme importing 12,000 North Koreans by year's close, solely for Alabuga. Not fair pay, modern slave chains and human plunder. Deals with North Korea's Green Pine Corps and facade firm Jihyung Tech ship thousands under regimes mimicking State Department 2017 cheap labor horror, passports seized, pay funneled to Kim, world ties severed. Kremlin shrugs, these folks avoid drafts, strikes, demands, perfect props. Unexposed files show visas force students dodge UN curbs, their cogs in war's engine, blood and sweat greasing its mechanics, senses assaulted by metallic tangs and relentless clangs. As defense crumbles, Russia's industries alienate further, a hush falling as homeland fades. 2024 labor stats reveal plants exceeding quotas by 16%, hauling 47,000 foreigners. This mere surface, build sites, mines, farms now swarm Central Asians, Chinese, Southeast Asians. Xi's regime outpaces Kim in vigor, flooding Vladivostok, Khabarovsk, Blagoveshchensk with nationals, who trek to Moscow, Petersburg for meager work. Tens of thousands swell, economists in Vedomosti deem it, necessity born of fronts claiming lives, graves claiming more, exiles fleeing borders. Avoid gapes in 20 to 40 age men. Filled by foreign hordes from afar, the Kapotnia line not anomaly, but forever shift. Grinding citizens for battles hands production to outsiders, sovereignty eroding bit by bit. Shudder if North Korea's hidden toilers unsettle you, the grand scheme looms worse. Collapse so dire demands not thousands, but millions, eyes set on India's masses. Labor Ministry denies, yet ground truths and slips unveiled plans for 1 million Indians by 2025's end. Eurocommerce chief Andrei Besmertny confesses the plan seals labor voids. Already underway, giants like X5 Group chains Pyataraka, Paracrestic, plus online titan Ozon employ Indians in depots, shipping hubs. Industrialists League backs Indian vocational schools, trainee preps endorsed by Education Ministry. As Russia's schooling languishes, youth to carnage, tomorrow's workers train abroad, this economic pick or identity's extinction? Sensory overload hits, spice sense of curries, hum chants displacing vodka songs, tactile rough-palmed grasp shaking Russian grips. Siberia and Far East morph, China's North Korea's sway into pure population flip, beyond mere deals. Analysts mutter Kapotnia norms Russia's fate, and netizens cry, Putin's sly game, war till last Russian perishes, then swap in replacements. Petersburg saw 4,000 Indian job bids last season, firms like Strойmontaj pivot to South Asia, Central Asians shunning Russia for rubble slump, war dread. Chiefs bemoan language mazes, culture crashes breeding mayhem, cities splintered by tongues, ways, war-born enclaves. Foreign swell clearest Kremlin failure sign, Putin pledges future to interlopers for war's sake. Nation sinks to China's stockpile, North Korea's penal hub, Global South's bargain bazaar. Most chilling, factory influxes bleed to lethal front lines. Empire's import mania darkens to bloodier inhumanity. If this economic tale peaks here, ponder the abyss, a worldwide hunter sought not sustain empire, but feed trenches with global pawns. What horror awaits as borders blur unrecognizably, the bitter irony of a fallen giant begging outsiders to bleed. Feel the tension build, breaths quickening, minds racing to untangle the web. In our last reveal, we uncovered how the Kremlin is importing 12,000 North Korean workers to the Alabuga facility. This isn't fair hiring. It's stark labor theft. Exploiting human desperation for Putin's war gears. Can you feel the icy chill of isolation? The branded passports ripped away like a mother's security blanket. Snatched under the glare of indifferent eyes. Wages sliced thin, funneling straight to Kim Jong-un's iron grip. No whispers to the world outside. Silence enforced like a gag over their cries. Why does the Kremlin brush this off? For Putin, they're the perfect underclass, no draft dodging, no angry rallies, no rights demanded. They toil under sweat-stained skies, their blood greasing the Russian war machine. Imagine the forbidden documents leaking like poison gas. Exposés from shadows online. Russians sneaking them under student visas to dodge United Nations bans. On paper, learners of knowledge. In bitter truth, cogs in a death-dipped factory. Their grunts echo through drone assembly lines. The stench of grease and fear clinging to their damp uniforms. This rot spreads beyond arsenals. Russia's industrial soul is hijacked. Ministry of Labor statistics for 2024 scream it, over 47,000 foreign hires, blasting past the quota by 16%. These numbers? Merely the ominous tip. Construction sites echo with unfamiliar tongues, mining shafts hum with outsider strength, farms sway under imported hands. Central Asia swarms in, China invades Southeast Asia. Xi's regime rivals Kim's zeal. Flooding cheap labor like a rising tide drowning national pride. Ever wondered if Russia is becoming a distant outpost, not a superpower? The humiliation burns, Putin's empire, pawn to rivals' whims. Walk the smog-choked streets of Vladivostok or Khabarovsk. Chinese faces bloom like invasive weeds in a neglected garden. Blagoveshchensk teems with their presence, a visual takeover unfolding. Tens of thousands routed from these frontiers to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Slaving for scraps in factories, their calls use as rubbing rough against cold machinery. Wages so meager, they taste like defeat. Like the North Koreans, their influx surges unchecked. Is this the unraveling of a nation's very fabric? The sensory assault, clashing cuisines wafting through alleys, multicultural chaos fraying the once united thread. But what if these imported shadows don't stop at the gates? What darker plan simmers in the Kremlin's cauldron, turning labor into lethal cannon fodder? The tension coils tighter, whispering of wars fought by stranger hands. Will Russia awaken to this creeping curse, or fade into borrowed flesh and blood? The stakes rise, a homeland's heart, besieged by foreign ghosts. Your pulse races now. Brace for the brutal turn ahead, where human imports cross into carnage. What hideous secrets lurk as the Kremlin's hunt goes global? The anticipation grips like a vice, pulling you into the abyss of revelation. Is Russia's heart beating its last, as cheap labor floods in from China's shadows? Have you ever felt the chill of hearing your homeland being rewritten without your voice? Imagine Moscow, once the pride of an empire, now mirroring labor camps from far-off lands, endless queues of foreign workers, their arrival hidden behind Kremlin walls. This isn't just an invasion, it's a silent takeover of Russia's workforce, with tens of thousands from North Korea, China, and India swarming factories, farms, and battlefronts. Experts warn it's not temporary, it's reshaping a superpower into a global dumping ground, grinding down its people in war while gifting its future to outsiders. But how deep does the rot go, and what shocking pivot awaits us next? Just as North Korean workers toil in Tatarstan's drone plants under stolen identities and seized wages, China's grip tightens like a vice. Those eerie images from Vladivostok and Khabarovsk, cities pulsing with the scent of exhaled steam from cold, overworked hands, show the surge in. Just like their Pyongyang neighbors, more Chinese nationals pour into Russia, their footsteps echoing promises of low pay that feed Putin's machine. Moscow and St. Petersburg draw thousands, sent from border towns, their presence a creeping takeover leaving a metallic taste of inevitable loss. Economists in Vedomosti admit it's no choice, Russia's men vanish daily into fronts or graves or foreign soils, leaving holes aching to be filled. The workforce pyramid fractures, that 20 to 40 age gap yawning like an open wound, now patched with Asian legions marching in. What feels like a harsh economic slap could tip the scales irreversibly. Will this influx hammer the final nail, or is a fiercer storm brewing for Russia's soul? Building on that crushing transformation of Russia's eastern edges, where Chinese enclaves sprout like invasive vines, the nation's core cracks further. The Kapotniku isn't fleeting panic, it's etched evidence of permanence, as factories and mines groan under Central Asian and Southeast Asian hands, profits soaring for foreign regimes while Russians surrender control. Piece by piece, sovereignty slips away, exchanged for survival amid Putin's grindstone war. The air thickens with desperation, voices murmuring of a nation auctioned off to Asia. If Pyongyang's exploited shadows chill you, brace for the monster lurking, millions, not thousands, summoned to patch the gaping void. Russia's slide is bottomless, eyeing India's vast reserves as the fix, amid denials from labor officials masking leaked truths. By 2025's end, 1 million Indians could arrive, bridging the abyss. Can a homeland recover from mortgaging its blood for borrowed labor, or does humiliation turn to Hell's Gate? As Russia's surrender deepens with every surrendered factory and bent back, the India gambit unfolds like a grand betrayal. Ministry of Labor veils it, but ground realities and whispers scream otherwise, preparations underway to haul those millions. Ural Chamber of Commerce Chief Andrei Belisvetov calls it lifeline duty, sealing the human rift already cracking. It's real, X5 Group's networks, from Perekrestik to Ozon's hubs, echo with Indian accents sorting goods. Their calloused palms gripping crates in a rhythm Russia's youth forfeit for trenches. The Union of Industrialists urges Indian training schools, blessed by Education Ministry support. As domestic skills rot in the conflict's slag heap, India's youths are forged into Russia's replacements, educated abroad, imported ready. The smell of cooked spices mixes with machine oil, a cultural clash igniting fears of identity's erasure. Is this mere economics, or a dagger to the nation's heart, raising outsiders to claim crowns while locals die? What dread awaits if war's hunger draws these faces closer to lethal lines? Factories pulse as foreigners dominate, cultural collisions raging like thunder. St. Petersburg's 4,000 Indian applicants last year signaled a flood, construction titans like Samara Group shifting to South Asia, gripped by ruble's tumble and mobilization dread. Even Central Asians shun it, fearing drafts and ruin. Executives grapple with Babel barriers, ghettos sprawling from language storms, tactile disarray in a fractured society. War's chaos births this divide, Kremlin's defeat plain as the rising foreign tide. Putin bets Russia's tomorrow on imports, morphing it into China's resource pit, Korea's toil pen, and the South's bargain bazaar. These arrivals, streaming through production's doors, edge toward doom's threshold, frontline polls looming. The narrative of economic woe twists savage, Kremlin's human raids turn global, pulling not just laborers but cannon fodder, hurling the superpower into a moral abyss where outsiders bleed first. What if their ranks swell into mercenary hordes, outnumbering Russians in their own backyard? Imagine this, while frontline soldiers like your grandfather endured the stench of mud and gunpowder, trench life a nightmare of fear and survival, the homefront factories buzzed with imported hands. Shocking, isn't it? What if Putin's war isn't just devouring Russians, but erasing them from their own nation? As factories from Siberia to St. Petersburg fill with outsiders, the creep of strangers threatens our core. Analysts murmur darkly, disturbances in Kapotnya signal a new reality. One desperate local posted online, piercing the silence, the boss's sly scheme unfolds. Fight till the last native perishes, then swap them out. St. Petersburg saw over 4,000 Indians seeking work last year, drawn like moths to fading light. Giant builders, from Somalia group, pivot to South Asia. Even Central Asians flee the crumbling ruble and war dread. Bosses grumble, tongues clash, customs collide, hurdles mounting. Look close, homogeneity shatters. Streets echo unfamiliar shouts, air thick with exotic spices and street food wafts. War-fueled enclaves sprout, cultural divides widening. Foreign swelling in jobs exposes the Kremlin's deep panic. Putin gambles our tomorrow on exotics to fuel endless combat. Our land morphs, China's resource pit, North Korea's sweatshop realm. Global South's bargain basement. Terror grows, these arrivals bleed past workshops. Factory doors swing open to lethal fields, trenches beckoning next. If this tale stopped here, it merely decoded a downturn. Yet, the regime's agendas spiral deeper, a bloody, brutal hunt chasing global souls for more than labor. Prepare for the twist, bodies not only churning machines, but storming battlegrounds. Flashback, you recall a crisp Moscow morning, 5 winters past. Sunlight glinting on red bricks, the babble of native voices at market stalls, rich with borscht aromas and laughter in Russian. Now? That warmth fades, replaced by whispers of change. Rhetoric builds, how do we reclaim our soil from this influx tide? Who really controls the brakes now? The entire operation reveals a grim reality, a brutal human trafficking scheme disguised as volunteer work or employment. These foreign workers are not simply filling factory jobs, they are being used as collateral in a deadly game. Once they arrive, many find themselves pushed through another gate, directly onto the front lines of conflict. How did Russia turn its human resource crisis into this dark, merciless gamble? This sinister strategy extends far beyond economic necessity. Russia is engaged in a ruthless hunt, not just for labor but for soldiers willing to fight and die in a war they barely understand. Thousands of foreigners, tricked by promises of high wages, easy citizenship, and better lives, are being sent into the hellish chaos of Ukraine's battle zones. The echoes of their footsteps are drowned out by the pounding of their own fears and the distant sounds of gunfire. According to Ukrainian authorities, at least 18,000 foreign fighters from over 128 nations have been recruited since the conflict escalated. Of these, more than 3,300 are dead. Coffins coming home wrapped in silence, unmarked graves hidden across Ukrainian soil. Yet, despite mounting bloodshed, the Kremlin's propaganda machine presses on, selling false hopes. On social platforms like VKontakte and Telegram, enticing ads flood the digital airwaves. They lure desperate individuals with promises of paying jobs, instant citizenship, and hefty bonuses, up to 3.4 million rubles. Only one problem, the promises are lies. The job isn't just security. It's combat. It's death. An Indian man, lured by the promise of support jobs, found himself in the trap. His passport confiscated, his phone taken. He called his wife from a distant border crossing, gasping that they were sending him to the front. Then silence. His story is just one of thousands. The Indian government reports 44 of their citizens are trapped in Russian military service. Diplomatic tensions are rising as families demand answers. But the true horror goes deeper. Behind the scenes, workers from Nepal, Sri Lanka, Kenya, and South Africa are being exploited and sacrificed. Poverty fuels their desperation. These individuals, driven by economic despair, are thrown into the abyss. They serve as pawns, covering the Kremlin's tracks and fueling its war effort. Their fate is sealed with every forced deployment, a stark reminder of human lives traded like commodities. How much longer can this cold, calculated cruelty continue? When will the world awaken to the full extent of this human toll? Behind every foreign face in Russia's war zone, there lies a story of betrayal, suffering, and loss, a haunting echo of a nation losing its moral compass amidst a relentless hunt for survival. In our last deep dive, we uncovered Russia's grim strategy of hauling in laborers from Nepal, Sri Lanka, Kenya, and South Africa, ensnared by desperation, only to hurl them straight into the merciless grind of its battlefronts. A diplomatic storm rages as citizens trapped in Russian ranks clamor to come home, yet beneath this chaos lurks a vaster, uglier scheme. Imagine the quiet betrayal, a horde of impoverished souls, hunted from distant lands, funneled into Putin's killing machine. Prepare yourself for a bombshell that shatters your faith in empires. Could it be that Vladimir Putin's invasion isn't just devouring Ukrainians, but cannibalizing Russia itself, trading Russian blood for cheap foreign cannon fodder? Picture the acrid stench of gunpowder mingling with sweat-soaked uniforms on a frostbitten trench, where a Kenyan recruit's ragged boots sink into blood mud, his heart pounding against the relentless crack of artillery. Is that the bitter tang of betrayal on your tongue, or just the haunting echo of a nation's suicide? Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba lays it bare with chilling precision. In his words, Russian commanders wield foreigners like disposable pawns, knowing full well they'll never face reckoning for those lifeless bodies strewn across the battlefield. Why? Because a Russian mother's tearful wail over a son's casket in Moscow could ignite rebellion, a volatile fuse the Kremlin dreads. But a mourning kin in a mud hut village in Nepal? That's invisible, insignificant, no threat to Putin's iron grip. This ruthless calculation is the Kremlin's ace in the hole, wage war's ultimate toll not with homeland lives, but with the crimson life force of the global destitute. These stark visuals, crowds queuing desperately in Kapotnia, and faceless mercenaries perishing amid the carnage, aren't isolated horrors. They're mirrored faces of the same corroded coin. Russia has bled its own people dry in this quagmire, forfeiting nearly 1 million souls to death and devastation, survivors marked by scars that won't heal. Now, it scrambles to inject outsider vitality, biological fuel sourced from afar, just to stagger forward. The migrant toiling in the factory's den, hands blistered and calloused from endless shifts amid the metallic screech of machinery, sustains the churn of production. The imported combatant in the line of fire spares Russian brethren from doom, his screams drowned in the thunderous roar of explosions, earth trembling underfoot. Yet, here lies the gut-wrenching twist: Russia, once a colossus feeding itself, dissolves into a parasitic web, its economy tethered to alien toil, siphoning the world's waning reserves like a vampire draining light from the shadows. It's a tragic tapestry unraveling thread by thread. Vladimir Putin, obsessive in his quest to seize Ukraine, barters Russia's tomorrow on this altar of ambition. As young countrymen vanish into the maw of trenches, fates sealed by Putin's decree, holes gape wide, patched with North Korean sweat, Indian hardship, and African despair. That serpentine queue snaking toward the Kapotnia refinery? It whispers no mundane plea for work. It's the raw pulse of Russia's morphed reality, a war waged to protect the motherland now eroding its very essence. The Kremlin has ransacked the human bedrock of Russia, transmuting it into a sprawling bazaar of foreign servitude. And if that queue feels like a temporary scar, ponder this abyss: what irrevocable fractures will tomorrow unearth when Russia awakens, hollow and unrecognizable? In the queue at Kapotnia refinery, where foreign workers line up, we've uncovered how Russia's crisis is reshaping its very soul. Now, imagine the final blow: a nation eating itself alive, just to cling to outdated dreams. Picture this shocking reality. Could a superpower really fade into a shadow, its future handed to strangers on a silver platter? The conflict rages on, yet unmistakable cracks are forming. Feel the weight of crumbling foundations, the bitter taste of defeat in the air. History won't hail this as triumph. Instead, it's a grim tale of self-destruction, where citizens vanish into the void, and outsiders claim the throne. Scents of sweat and desperation linger in crowded streets. The rough edge of uncertainty grates against every hope. What's next for a land that bet everything on conquest, only to lose its heart? Will this hidden shift redefine Russia's core forever? How might waves of newcomers rebuild, or fracture, a society adrift? Voices echo with unease. A twist lurks, perhaps recovery isn't rebirth, but a eerie forgery. Pauses hang heavy, like the silence before an unheard warning. What if the ultimate betrayal isn't foreign boots, but forgetting who you were? Stay tuned for echoes of truth. And sparingly. In fact, we've uncovered how Vladimir Putin's operation in Ukraine is draining Russia's male workforce fast, pushing the Kremlin to bring in millions from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East just to keep things moving. And remember, reports claim the Russian army has lost 1 million lives, creating a void that's changing everything. What if I told you Russia's leading men are vanishing faster than smoke in the wind, leaving factories and fields echoing with emptiness? That terrifying drop hits hard. Out of 143 million people, only 66 million are Russian men across all ages. With 1 million active troops and 2 million reservists locked in service, foreign hands now grip the reins of labor. Can you imagine the sting of betrayal, as outsiders step in, tumbleweeds rolling through once busy streets? Today's dive reveals how every job sector in Russia slips away quietly, overtaken by shadows. We'll peel back the curtain on this shadow empire of hired guns, swapping Russians not just in workshops, but on brutal battlegrounds too. Brace yourself, this could unravel the tale of a giant crumbling from the inside. To reach the heart of this crumbling world, journey 1,000 kilometers east from Moscow, toward Tatarstan's gates, into the vast Alabuga Special Economic Zone. Here stands a colossal factory of death, churning Iran-designed Shahed-136 kamikaze drones, or Garani in Russian, bombs that rain terror on Ukrainian towns. Ukraine's intelligence agency, HUR, tallies Russia's drone output at 170 to 190 strikes daily, pumped not by sleek machines, but brutal sweat. The air reeks of oil and desperation. Hands calloused and bleeding on cold metal. Russian defense plants scream for 400,000 missing workers. Engineers, techs, machinists, gone, shoved into trenches by Putin's command, many never returning, their absence a silent roar. Who fills the breach? Whispers from Pyongyang expose the truth. Ukrainian intel reports the Kremlin plots to shuttle 12,000 North Korean laborers into Alabuga by year's end, choking on forced toil. No mere hires, this reeks of theft, chains wrapped in silence. Pacts with North Korea's green pine and its cover, Jihyang technology, planned shifts of masses to Tatarstan. They endure hellish echoes of that 2017 U.S. State Department expose on slave labor markets. Passports seized, pay siphoned to Kim's vault, worlds cut off like a slammed door. Yet the Kremlin shrugs, viewing them as cheap cogs, uncomplaining, draft-proof, no demands for rights. Online leaks reveal visas masked as student permits to dodge UN bans. On paper, scholars, in reality, their grit and grime grease war gears. Smell the metallic tang? Feel the grind against skin? Isn't this invasion unfolding unnoticed, a slow poison killing a nation's soul? Picture the twist, if this factory haze chills you, what's next could shatter bones. What evil lurks when empires trade flesh for fuel, and the workforce war turns global? Vladimir Putin's military campaign in Ukraine is rapidly emptying Russia's male workforce, compelling the Kremlin to bring in millions from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East to sustain operations. Claims suggest the Russian military has endured 1 million casualties, reshaping the nation's fabric. What horrifying secret lies beneath the gears of Putin's war machine, a factory where desperation fuels death itself? Imagine rows of workers, not Russians, but captives from a distant regime, their sweat powering drones that devastate cities. Dive into the vortex of devastation, 1,000 kilometers east of Moscow. Land at Tatarstan's doorstep, in the sprawling Alabuga Special Economic Zone. This gargantuan death plant manufactures Iran-made Shahed-136 kamikaze drones, known as Garin in Russian. They unleash terror on Ukrainian settlements. Ukraine's HUR intelligence reports daily output of 170 to 190 assault models. Efficiency comes not from advanced tech, but relentless toil. Run your fingers over chilled metal surfaces. Breathe the sharp odor of lubricants and sweat. Hear the clanging of machinery, a relentless pulse echoing through vast halls. Russia's defense sector gaps with 400,000 missing personnel. Engineers, specialists, operators, all dispatched to the trenches by Putin's decree. Few survive that abyss of mud and fire. Does this abandonment sting like a blade? Innocence lost, replaced by outsiders who endure without question. Sources from Pyongyang reveal the grim reality. Ukrainian intelligence uncovers a Kremlin scheme to deploy 12,000 North Korean laborers to Alabuga by year-end. Enduring coerced labor like stolen lives. Agreements with North Korea's Green Pine firm and front entity Jihyung Technology orchestrate the transfer of throngs to Tatarstan. Workers toil under horrors matching the 2017 U.S. State Department report on forced cheap labor. Passports seized. Earnings funneled to Kim's coffers. All external ties severed, a cage of isolation. The Kremlin's indifference runs deep. These individuals? Cheap assets. Unlike Russians, they dodge conscription, stifle dissent, and spurn labor rights. Feel the rough grip on tools, the ache in worn muscles. Imagine dormitory walls closing in, devoid of voices or light. Yet, intelligence leaks unveil deception. Visa disguises as student permits skirt UN restrictions. Officially, scholars. In truth, their blood and endurance drive the war's merciless momentum. Can you scent the metallic bite, the grime clinging like dread? Does this spectral workforce mimic a nation's slow bleed? But brace for the unforeseen shock. If these shadows haunt the factory floors, what monstrous string pulls them next, weaving foreign bodies into Russia's very strife? The global labor plunder expands beyond whispers, and the real horrors await.